Since its birth, Dungeons & Dragons has always been a niche pastime, but over the past year has suddenly bloomed in growth. The reason for which may be more challenging than you think. But first, what exactly is Dungeons & Dragons? Dungeons & Dragons is a fantasy tabletop role-playing game which was published in 1974. It is commonly abbreviated as D&D. D&D is a storytelling adventure, generally played with a group of friends, a notebook, the rules book, some writing utensils, and a lot of imagination. Oh, and we cannot forget the most important piece of D&D too, the dice. In this game, you embark upon wild adventures with your friends as you assume the role of great heroes you create yourself, with a wide array of classes, spells, and weapons to choose from. You fight monsters, talk to countless unique souls, and delve deep into forgotten areas filled to the brim with glistening loot. All of which are created by the Dungeon Master. Without them, the game would simply not work. With a big enough table and creative flair on your hands, you and your friends can easily meet up and host a session. At least that was the case before 2020. Disaster soon struck the world. In December 2019, China had begun to see an unknown disease, similar to pneumonia, sweep the nation. In early January, it had claimed its first victim. Soon people couldn't leave the house anymore, unless it was deemed necessary. Tensions were starting to run high as people's patience, tolerance, and mentality were drastically running low. The virus suddenly put the world at a standstill, including the fantasy one many players grew accustomed to. This isn't a tale about dungeons nor dragons. It's a tale about survivors.
A lot of the fun of D&D is getting together with your friends, seeing each other, having a laugh. And now it's like D&D's lost that sense of fun.
So we no longer meet face to face, and that is obviously the biggest change as far as D&D goes. Is the biggest draw for D&D, right? Is collaborative storytelling, being with friends, goofing off, talking in accents, acting out things. It's just, that's what's fun about D&D. So it's hard to not have that anymore.
Main thing how it's affected us is the inability now to hang out with my friends while playing it, which truly does suck, because that's most of the experience of playing the game, is hanging out with your friends, rolling dice together, and you don't really get the same feeling digitally.
So for us, D&D was a great way for us to actually see people. That was our socializing. Our socializing was when people would come round, or we would go to somebody's house when we could, and playing D&D.
Even though we're seeing the people that we play with, we're not technically with them, so we're missing out. We're missing the being in the same room as people, that kind of socialization.
It was nerve-wracking to move from a physical face-to-face game to a virtual tabletop. So as soon as COVID hit and we got there when we can't do face-to-face games anymore, it was a massive blow. We really had to put our heads together to try and figure out, how do we keep people's interest in the charity? How do we bring people together and keep sort of driving the narrative forward for our world whilst maintaining that core of people? How do we keep these people invested? How do we continue to raise money, even though we can't do what we initially set out to do?
I don't know anybody that's not been affected. So it's made a lot of the world just harder to live in. You kind of have to take everything easy right now. I mean, the whole world just feels like it's on fire. It was hard some days. So it's just a challenging time for everyone. We all need like the escape.
However, despite the conditions the world quickly brought upon players, there was a silver lining to this stage.
I think that's a really great thing in a time like this, in a pandemic, because even though we're on top of each other all of the time, you need to be able to do fun things together.
And then because of COVID, we've obviously had to go through to video, which was a big change.
It was,
And then we're now doing about 3 or 4 a week to make sure that all of our friends are kind of, stay in contact with all of our friends, make sure they're okay, and then we go on with D&D and have fun, and it's great.
It had a really positive effect, because if it wasn't for COVID, I would not have rediscovered D&D. And I live on my own currently, and during lockdown 1, where before the what they call it, the bubbles that we're allowed to have now, I was basically on my own in my home, stuck in the 4 walls. That's when I discovered D&D, and it brought back an element of like, my social life, because the only time I've been using things like Zoom and whatever else there is, it has been for work purposes. In D&D, it's been the most fun sort of creative activity I've done in a long time, in terms of just being able to use your imagination and just having it. Well, it is. I know people take it seriously, but for me, it is a laugh, and it's a lot of fun. And that's the thing. It's been such a positive experience. COVID just giving me the opportunity to rediscover D&D.
I play it so much more now, because before lockdown actually started, I was only literally on one game that was face to face. At the moment, I think I'm on like 7. I'm like literally joined like 7 different campaigns. And yeah, it's a bit hectic, especially when I'm trying to like remember what game is scheduled for when, so I don't like accidentally like book myself in for the same for a different campaign on the same day. It's been like super stressful in that respect, but at the same time, like I've met loads of interesting people through all these campaigns, and it's been so much fun.
As we continue to dive in and out of perpetual lockdowns, especially within the UK, we grow ever closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. With patience and the strength to push forward, we will see tables packed full of players again. Dice will be hitting the table, chants will be made, the rogue tieflings will be edgier than ever, people's reactions will be sweeter than ever too, and a big bad evil villain of the campaign will get his just desserts, except this time in person with snacks, joys, and figures aplenty.